Chapter 31. Does it make you happy to tease me like that? 3. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. As if a pot of cold water had been poured over his head, Yan Cheng had a straight face. Does it make you happy to tease me like that? Neither saying yes or no, she nodded. I'll have to trouble you to change the sheets. Thanks. This was a night that never ends. Also, it wasn't a good night at all. Yan Cheng let out a long sigh and left the bathroom. The huge disparity between pre- and post-marital life made him lament. I've never done anything like this before. Ah, I miss having a nanny. To think he never had to worry about such trivialities back then. But who could have thought that Chen Jinyao's ears would perk up at this moment? Yan Cheng, I need to make something clear with you. The man who didn't know how to change the bed sheets was making a mess out of the bed. You married a wife, not a nanny. That's why we have to share the household chores. Yan Cheng pursed his lips at that and did not speak. He thought to himself, if Chen Jinyao still had the courage to come and tell him to share the chores once she's seen this pitiful sight, then he concedes defeat. 15 minutes later. When he sensed that the shower was turned off, Yan Cheng hurriedly escaped to the living room. Clink, clank. Nobody had any idea what he was tinkering with. After she came out and saw the mess, Chen Jinyao's expression cracked for a moment. After barely returning to normal, she kept a calm face and dragged her body to clean up his dog pit into one fit for a human before slipping back under the covers. Who cares what the person who tossed her the work ran off to, she was ready to cherish her last 3 hours before dawn. Then, Yan Cheng came in loudly with his slippers. Then, he tossed her a fully charged heater. I made you a cup of brown sugar ginger tea. The almighty Baidu taught him how to successfully seek forgiveness after tossing work aside. Bdnvl. However, things wouldn't end here. After taking a small sip of the brown sugar ginger tea, Chen Jinyao didn't forget to eye him. Even if you don't know how to do it, you don't have to be in such a hurry to look away. You could learn. After a pause, she added with a grin, I could teach you. Yan Cheng had a complicated look on his face. After a short struggle, he chose no. No need. I'm not learning it. The disagreements between Hua Qidong and Yan Cheng began at college. The exact reason, however, he couldn't quite recall. Perhaps it was due to envy, or maybe it was some other reason. But what he couldn't deny was the fact that Hua Qidong was both conceited and selfish. He was particularly good at disguising himself as a righteous person, but by essence, he was petty and cunning. He didn't like Yan Cheng, so as long as it was something Yan Cheng had or liked, he would try to snatch it from him no matter what it takes. And when he succeeded, he beams with pride and pomp. Take for example, Zhou Shui. In the end, Zhou Shui chose to marry him, and he felt that that was one of his best wins. Only gradually, he also began to discover that things may not be as he had thought. As time went on, this mismatch became a sort of habit. When the darkness inside of him came out, he couldn't stomach seeing Yan Cheng living so well now after losing his beloved. Only adding Chen Jinyao on WeChat in the middle of the night and recording a message to her with a tone of familiarity, Hua Qidong had to admit that he had done this on purpose. He came up with this idea when he saw Yan Cheng and Chen Jinyao getting along peacefully. He and Chen Jinyao had many mutual friends, so it wasn't actually hard getting a hold of her contact information. Adding her in the middle of the night added to the suggestiveness. And all he had to do was wait quietly until dawn for Chen Jinyao to add him. Since Chen Jinyao liked him before, this was simply too easy. However, even until the next night, he still did not get any responses on WeChat. And, when he tried to add her again, he found that he had been blacklisted. Chapter 32. Are you worried I'll blow up the kitchen? 1. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. For people whose bodies are cold in nature, they are more prone to menstrual cramps. Especially the first 2 days of their period. They'll feel soreness in their backs and weakness in their legs. Her tummy was cramping up so much that Chen Jinhao felt like she was going to die. This terrible sight that almost looked like some sort of terminal illness shocked Yan Cheng. He never studied well in biology class and had never known how terrifying the pain that women could experience during their period. The warm heater on her tummy didn't help. It didn't help even when Yan Cheng pressed his hot palms softly against her tummy. After waking up naturally, it was like Chen Jinhao had her soul sucked away. She was completely listless and curled up, moaning in pain. The even more terrifying part was, even under such half-dead conditions, she still wanted to stay strong and get up for work. Yan Cheng did not admire her dedication at all. He squinted his eyes and gritted his teeth. Then, he linked his arm around Chen Jinyao's neck and pulled Chen Jinyao back to the bed with absolute force and casually pulled the blanket off him, throwing it on Chen Jinyao, and wrapping her like a rice dumpling before he finally felt at ease. Turning over, he got on top of Chen Jinyao, who was forced to lie down straight. One on top and the other on the bottom, they were separated by the width of a fingertip and facing each other, they were just able to see into each other's dark eyes. Chen Jinyao was confused for a moment. Are you so proud of being a model worker? The man had just woken up a moment ago and there was still some huskiness in his voice. After bringing over the phone from the bedside table, he rolled away from Chen Jinyao and off the bed and, scratching at his messy hair, sat down with his leg crossed over the other. His dark eyelashes lowered. Can't you call and ask for a day off? His tone was somewhat unhappy and mean. After that was over, he got up, hopped off bed, and walked to the window after slipping on his slippers. Meanwhile, he had already memorized her phone's passcode by heart. But it seems like it's more than just the passcode he was familiar with. Everything past the passcode was also things that Yan Cheng was familiar with. Only under Chen Jinyao's dumbfounded gaze, Yan Cheng quickly found the landline number of her clinic and glancing up at her, dialed the number. The usual beginning of the clinic's workday was 9 o'clock. It was currently 7:40, which meant it was still early. But usually, the nurses on duty such as Xiao Lu and Xiao Li would leave early. They were housemates and for the sake of convenience, both of them stayed only a 10-minute walk away from the clinic. It was very close. Xiao Lu had just opened the shutters at this moment, and after pulling them up, she heard the phone at the front desk ring. She thought it was a patient here to make an early appointment, but she would never have expected that it would be a call for leave from the person who paid her salary. My wife isn't feeling well today, so she won't be coming in to work. Then, while she was still recovering from the shock and couldn't even respond, the call was cut off. The beeping sound lingering in her ears as she wondered. Not feeling well. Where? How did she end up unwell? My God, resisting the urge to scream, Xiao Lu's face reddened instantly, thinking that she had just learned of a great secret. Chapter 33. Are you worried I'll blow up the kitchen? 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the night rain, he thought the sky would clear up. BDNVL.M, but unexpectedly, it began to snow. It wasn't just a tiny bit of snow that melted as soon as it touched the ground. When he pulled the curtains apart and looked out, all he could see were fluttering snowflakes. Yan Cheng tossed the phone back to Chen Jinyao and looked down at her, lips turning up. He said, Factly, stay at home and rest these next few days. You own the clinic anyway, it's okay to skip work. Besides, it's the weekends tomorrow, he added. Chen Jinyao dared not affirm that. She shrunk her head back into her blanket, leaving behind only a pair of large eyes. After a short moment of silence, she said, You think I'm just like you, able to enjoy a retirement life at home. Go and take a look at yourself in the mirror, you're getting fat. You won't look good if you get fatter. Yan Cheng did not pay attention to such deliberate provocations. In truth, with the imminent reopening of the air pavilion, there were many things that required his presiding over. Seems like he won't have many days left where he could play with the cat all day at home. He took a deep sigh and slowly headed for the bed, tugging at Chen Jinyao's long hair that was draped over the pillow. He forcefully changed the topic. Your last period didn't seem this bad, did it? Chen Jinyao clicked her tongue and shook her head to shake off Yan Cheng's hand that was messing up her hair. It hurts about this much most of the time. The less painful ones were in the minority, or so to say the ones that didn't hurt so much that she couldn't stand it. Yan Cheng's hand paused. Then, his frown grew even deeper. Staring at her pale, bloodless cheeks, he said, go have it checked out at the hospital later. No need. Chen Jinyao popped her head back out of the covers. Raising her jaw slightly, she said, I'll be back to life in 2 days. Yan Cheng's brows frowned even further. He clearly disagreed with what Chen Jinyao said. He narrowed his eyes and pursed his lips as if searching for a suitable reason to persuade her to give up on this strenuous and dangerous idea. That treats the symptoms, not the root cause. Yan Cheng grabbed Chen Jinyao's chin. He stroked his thumb over the smooth skin. Even though Chen Jinyao couldn't break free, she was still able to respond righteously, I'm a doctor. I know my own physical condition. The best way to deal with these symptoms if by conditioning with Chinese medicine. The conditioning cycle was quite long, and you had to drink bitter medicine each and every day. At that, Yan Qing sneered. You're just a dentist. Only Chen Jinyao stuck out the tip of her tongue and licked her lip. Fortunately, the sound of stomach rumbling broke the stalemate. After things suddenly went silent, the sound of the rumbling was particularly striking. Yan Qing glanced over at the alarm clock on the bedside table, then he turned his attention back on Chen Jinyao who was shaking from the effects of her period. He pursed his lips and subconsciously treated her as a patient, and even a frail one that required care and attention. There were priorities, and the current priority was to fill her stomach. I'll go make you breakfast. He conceded and gave up on trying to change her mind. But he was secretly planning in his mind. If Chen Jinyao is dead set on continuing with this, then he'll just carry her straight to the hospital. Chapter 34. Are you worried I'll blow up the kitchen? 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There were still a few bags of instant meat buns and the like inside the fridge. He just had to put them in a pot and steam them. Pretty simple. Chen Jinyao responded with an okay, looking quite obedient still. But in the next instant, Yan Qing felt that it was all just an illusion. I want hot porridge. You can just use the rice cooker. Wash the rice first and remember to put less rice, and more water. She didn't forget to teach him. She was pretty good at ordering him around. I'll feel a little better with something warm in me. We have shredded potatoes at home, don't we? You can fry some up to go with the porridge. Young Master Yen began to feel a little speechless. The darkness in his eyes gradually settled, and it twitched a little. He gritted his teeth silently and believed deep down in his heart that Chen Jinyao was getting too complacent and proud. Yan Qing narrowed his eyes and cast her a dangerous look. From the looks of it, he seemed ready to throw Chen Jinyao who was still struggling with her painful menstruation aside. Quite some time passed before the viciousness in his eyes subsided. After a long sigh, he turned around and got changed. Chen Jinyao did not notice her life teetering at the edge at all. Even if she did, she could have dragged her body to educate Yan Qing who was just about ready to rebel. But she was busy doing business right now. Just after she was done ordering what she wanted for breakfast, her phone lit up over and over again with notifications. The messages just kept coming on WeChat. It was a customer who had a tooth removal for cavities in the past. They were here bringing business in today. Chen Jinyao's dentistry clinic was near a college town. The people who usually come to visit are also usually college students. It was different from a regular clinic, however. Even though her clinic also has a business license and the other standard documents, but she mainly gets her business from referrals of patients who had their teeth fixed with them. Those who trust her dental clinic usually bring in their friends and classmates who want to correct their teeth or want to fix severe tooth decay too. Her work WeChat was also almost always filled with past patients who come and go, and they'll look for her directly on there if they have any questions. Ji Xiao. It's one of my schoolmates from the dorm next door. She wanted to straighten her teeth, so I'm just helping her ask about the cost and whatnot. Ji Xiao. My classmate's financial situation isn't very good, so I just wanted to ask, could you go a little cheaper, Dr. Chen? BL.net. Only Chen Jingyao thought for a moment and figured it was no big deal. They came bringing business to her after all, she should give them some face. She'll make it a bit cheaper, but not too much. As for whether or not she could afford the price, that wasn't within her considerations. Orthodontics isn't like cavities. They're not a necessity. Dr. Chen. Sure. You can tell her to add me on WeChat and I can talk with her about the specifics. After that, she felt another cramp in her abdomen. Something hot poured out that caused her to grit her teeth subconsciously. Turning over, she curled up and tossed her phone aside, narrowing her eyes and staring at Yan Cheng, who was already dressed neatly dazedly for a moment. Why are you dressed like you're about to head out? Chapter 35. Their eyes met. 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Just before heading out. Yan Cheng still couldn't stand looking at Chen Jingyao ghastly pale and rolling around in pain, but he also had no idea what to do. He was at wit's end. Eventually, after a moment of pondering, he decided the same old-fashioned but most effective method of boiling water and making another cup of brown sugar ginger tea for Chen Jingyao. Drink while it's hot. He glanced at her while resting the glass on the table. Chen Jingyao swept her gaze between Yan Cheng and the glass. After a few seconds, she struggled to get up and bent her knees, unwilling to give up any of the warmth under the covers, and leaned lazily against the headboard. She narrowed her eyes. I haven't brushed my teeth. As soon as she said that, the air froze. Chen Jingyao seemed to sense a turn in Yan Cheng's mood, similar to sucking in a breath of air in shock at her words. But fact was, she never really said anything shocking. She was just stating an objective fact in a serious way. The man lowered his gaze, dark lashes quivering. After a while, he let out a muffled scoff. Almost like a soft laugh, he asked softly in his slightly husky voice. So, do you want me to carry you in? Sure, it was cramping, but it wasn't as bad as a broken arm or a broken leg. As the door clicked shut, Chen Jingyao was left alone at home. She propped herself up on the sink and bit her lower lip lightly as she stared at herself in the mirror. For some reason, her blood-drained cheeks were dyed with a faint red tinge, and that was all because of Yan Cheng's flirty teasing. She could feel both her cheeks heating up. She's probably getting on in years, so much so that she can't handle being teased anymore. She shut her eyes and took 2 deep breaths. After that strange feeling calmed down inside her heart, she began squeezing toothpaste onto her toothbrush with a straight face. With water ready in her cup, she began to brush her teeth. Only after washing her face with cold water was she able to calm down completely. After taking small sips from the brown sugar ginger tea and finishing the cup slowly at the edge of the bed, Chen Jingyao looked out at the fluttering snowflakes outside the window in a daze. Her thoughts didn't fly too far, however. She just felt that this rainy, snowy day is quite a nice weather for her to fix herself to the bed. Only she paused for a few seconds, but Chen Jingyao still crawled into bed, swiftly slipping under her blanket which still had some warmth to it, and exhaled in comfort. She had no idea when Danny came into the room, but it crawled out of nowhere as soon as she laid down and hopped in front of her, rubbing itself sweetly against her cheek and called out to her in mews. Chen Jingyao reached her hand out to stroke it while pushing it back a little. It was only willing to stop after it was satisfied with the stroking and obediently found another place to continue sleeping. Its tail was flicking left and right, finally relieved of the misery of not seeing its mom all night. In a sense, Danny is seriously easy to coax better. Waiting was a particularly long process. Chen Jinhao narrowed her eyes and yawned. Her natural sleepiness made her worry that she would fall asleep without a care like Danny. She searched around the right of the bed, found her phone, and unlocked it. 10 minutes ago, Ji Zhao's schoolmate sent her a friend request. A large notification of a new contact flashed on the UI, making it hard to ignore. The additional message was also straightforward. Big Sister Chen, I'm Ji Zhao's schoolmate. Women don't like mentioning their age, or anything age-related, and words that clearly indicated that you are older were taboo. Chen Jinhao was not exempt from that, of course. She may be a little over herself, but compared to this overly friendly way of calling someone sister, she would prefer being called Dr. Chen. Chapter 36. Their eyes met. 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. She accepted it and listed her down straight out as Ji Zhao's schoolmate. Chen Jinhao sent her a cute emoji. About 2 minutes passed. Ji Zhao's classmate. Hello, Sister Chen. I would like to ask, how much would it cost to straighten my teeth? Doviko. It was the same question Ji Zhao asked her. Chen Jinhao. That would depend on the circumstances. You can send me a photo of the current state of your teeth. It would generally require about 5K or so. The photo was not sent over. Ji Zhao's classmate. That expensive? Chen Jinhao really didn't know how to respond to that. She lazily shut her eyes. For Ji Zhao's sake, she was certainly able to understand the tight money situation of her schoolmate. She also told Ji Zhao she would give her a discount, but you couldn't just cut the price in half with a discount, right? Ji Zhao's classmate. Wouldn't small clinics generally charge cheaper? Oh. Seeing this question means she had an idea about the prices for orthodontic treatments. Chen Jinhao narrowed her eyes. The fee is the same as other regular clinics. You can also ask other places. It was rare for her to have such patience to continue dealing with her. Chen Jinhao. I can give you a 500 yuan discount, but that's as much as I can go. Ji Zhao's schoolmate. Can't you give a higher discount? Her cramps were getting worse. It was easy for a woman on her period to get irritated. Especially while her stomach was hungry, her usual calm was completely gone. This was a less than pleasant negotiation. Chen Jinhao emphasized that she was running a clinic, not a charity. Then, as a final touch, she wrote, I really can't go any lower. At that point, the dialogue turned into complete silence. Chen Jinhao waited, but she didn't get a response. She figured this deal probably wasn't going to work out. About 7 or 8 minutes later. Ji Zhao's classmate. I'll come find you again after the New Year's. Usually, that was a sign of the other party's rejection. She actually stopped with the familiar way of speech. Chen Jinhao was considering whether to praise her for her politeness, but she could only remain expressionless. All right. Along with the bitter whistling winter winds, the snow got heavier outside. Downstairs, right outside the neighborhood was a breakfast shop. It's usually packed with customers and you'd have to line up just to get breakfast. When Yan Qing returned, there were still snowflakes over his shoulders. After patting them off, only water stains were left. Chen Jinhao shuffled out of bed. Her hunger temporarily helped her forget about her pain. With her slippers on, she headed to the living room and looked up, then she was shocked. Did you move the entire restaurant home? Here, your millet porridge. Yan Qing raised a brow but didn't answer her question. I haven't even bought my own breakfast. You should feel honored. Only so he bought more of what he thought looked good, not even caring if she could finish it or not. Chen Jinhao went over and pulled out a chair. Then, she rummaged through all the side dishes looking for the plain congee she had in mind. So. Do you want a reward? The man standing at the side didn't understand what she was getting at. Then, Chen Jingyao scooted over, got on her tiptoes, and circled her arms around his neck and pulled him down. Yan Qing leaned over as a flash of apprehension went past his clear eyes. Then, under his surprise, Chen Jingyao raised her face and landed a light peck on his lips, light as a dragonfly landing on the surface of a pond. It really was just a soft little touch, just like a dragonfly. Yan Qing was silent for a long time before he asked, "Have you brushed your teeth?" Then, he quickly reacted to the fact that he had almost tossed his life on the line and lightly rubbed his lip that had just been kissed. He cleared his throat. "You should give me more good morning kisses in the future. To nurture our relationship." Chapter 37. Their eyes met. 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Jingyao rolled her eyes and turned her attention back to her breakfast, not bothering to deal with him. During the meal, they were worried that things would get awkward if they didn't talk to each other. After a long moment of silence, Chen Jingyao began looking for topics and told Yan Qing about what had just happened with Ji Zhao's classmate. At the end, she lamented that making money was hard. It wasn't just once or twice where she encountered similar situations such as this one. People would always take for granted whether a dental clinic like yours would be able to go without the money or not. It's true that she wasn't lacking in money, but you come out to work to pad your wallet, not to let yourself lose money. Why care so much about those people? Yan Qing put down the fried dough stick he was eating. If I were you, I wouldn't even offer them a discount. After a pause, he said, "Just say you've got a cat to feed at home." Chen Jingyao shrugged. "I don't have to say anything more. Deal's off." Yan Qing, the days went by in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the year was coming to an end. By the time they realized it, New Year's Eve was just a few days away. The city was covered in snow and red lanterns hung from the rows of parasol trees, the red glow adding to the festive atmosphere. They didn't have to celebrate New Year's Eve this year at the Yan's either. This was Yan Cheng's suggestion. Who knows what went on in his mind, but it took much effort for young Master Yan to make this decision. He also didn't run out for the longest time to stir trouble. In Mother Yan's eyes, this was likely all thanks to Chen Jinyao's efforts. The two lovebirds wanted their alone time, so of course Mother Yan happily agreed. After her period, Chen Jingyao regained her vigor. It was almost as if that listless person from before wasn't her at all. Yan Qing lamented it a little, but at the same time, he didn't forget to advise her to see a doctor to get her cycle adjusted to prevent her rolling around in pain again in the future. Chen Jingyao would keep saying yes to everything he said, but she was lacking in terms of actually doing. As time went on, after having a clear look at the true face of this woman, Yan Qing pulled her and scoffed with a straight face. "The wound is healed but you forget the pain. Don't tell me to hold you or rub your belly again in the future." "Chen Jingyao, I'll go next year, definitely." There were still 5 days until New Year's Eve. Some sort of ball game seemed to be broadcasting on TV these nights. Most men enjoyed watching the games, and they liked staying up overnight just for them. They were chasing after the excitement, something you don't get from watching a rerun. Yan Cheng was not exempt from this common practice. He took an early shower and carried a blanket over to the living room sofa. Then, he told Chen Jingyao righteously, "You sleep by yourself, I won't be going in tonight." "Okay." Chen Jingyao nodded to express her understanding. To tell the truth, if men were reliable, then pigs would be able to fly. Chen Jingyao believed what Yan Cheng said about not going in tonight, and that was why she dared to walk out of the bathroom with body lotion after her shower. Only warm mist poured into the bedroom. She sat cross-legged on the bed with her bathrobe open, slowly rubbing the lotion over her body, starting from the neck and working her way down. As soon as she reached her collarbone, the door opened with a click. Yan Qing came in carrying Danny. "Tonight, I'll let this beast sleep with you in place of me." As soon as he looked up, their gaze met. The charming scenery that appeared before him shoved his words back into his throat. Yan Cheng, Chen Jinyao, Chen Jinyao. Yan Cheng. Chapter 38. The doorbell rang. 1. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. They were startled for a few seconds. Chen Jinyao felt as if she had just stepped on Danny's tail and exploded instantly. She quickly pulled her bathrobe together, but since she had moved too quickly, the other side would get pulled apart when she pulled one side, and the more she tried to fix it the worse it got, and the more anxious she got. She covered herself and with blushed red cheeks, bit down on her lips, glaring at him. Get out. She sounded annoyed, but it was so soft without any force behind it, like someone acting bashfully after being overtaken by embarrassment. Yan Cheng felt his throat getting dry and he stood there, unmoving. Close your eyes and get out. When Chen Jinyao saw him like that, she was pissed. She grabbed a pillow next to her and tossed it straight at him. But due to how great her movements were, her unfastened and loose bathrobe slipped down, revealing a smooth round shoulder that was half covered. Yan Cheng saw her staring at him, and within that innocence, he felt that he was seeing a little fox spirit seducing him. Under the bright lights, an awkward atmosphere swept over the scene. Chen Jinyao let out a scream and the shocked little fox spirit jumped down, burying her entire body under the blanket. She tried to grab at the edges of the blanket, but she just couldn't find it. When she lifted her head, her ears were completely red. From Yan Cheng's point of view, all he saw was her knees rubbing together unconsciously within the covers, then those red lips began to drive him out again. Get out, get out, get out. Yan Cheng lowered his gaze, concealing the tumbling darkness within. It took him quite a while before he found his voice again. All right. The next instant, just as he said, he turned around and left with much difficulty. His ears were also feeling slightly hot and his heart was beating fast. Other emotions were mixed into his dark irises. Everything happened so suddenly that he didn't even feel that excited about the ball game anymore. Chen Jinyao, all pink with shame and annoyance, was enough to kill him. Yan Cheng found that he, like other men, had a nasty streak in him. There was a hunger inside of him that told him he didn't want to be a saint, or perhaps that was instinct. He's really gonna die today. Yan Cheng narrowed his eyes and clicked his tongue. He put Danny back into its cage and stopped for a moment, headed for the couch, rummaged around and found the remote. After hesitating for 2 seconds, he turned off the TV decisively. Young Master Yan thought to himself, it's no big deal if he watched the rerun tomorrow. Chen Jinyao breathed a sigh of relief inside the bedroom. Her long lashes were fluttering and she reached out her arm, searching around for her lotion bottle. She still wanted to continue her skincare regimen. It's easy for your skin to get dry during the winters, and it feels uncomfortable when that happens. But before that, just in case, she'd better lock the door. Chen Jinyao got the bottle and placed it within her sight, then she slowly tied up her bathrobe. However, halfway through, Chen Jinyao would never have expected Yan Cheng to barge in a second time. She didn't even have the time to get up to lock the door. Chen Jinyao still remained laying on her belly. At this moment, she inexplicably felt like a fish on a chopping block. Only she tried to get up and change from a passive to a more active position, and at least turn her defenses on. But she would never have expected that as soon as her knee pressed on her bathrobe straps, it went loose again, instantly wasting her efforts. Chen Jinyao's eyes went wide and her face was overtaken by shock. In the next second, she chose the only way out. She laid back down straight and rolled into the covers to cover up first. With a click, the bright lights in the room went out, changing to dimmer, orange lights that brought a hint of suggestiveness to it. The culprit, Yan Cheng, walked over slowly and laid down by Chen Jinyao's side. Then, he turned his head to stare at her with his dark eyes filled with deep intentions. After a while, he let out a chuckle from deep within his chest that was filled with amusement. Chen Jinyao, he called her by her full name and lingered on the last syllable deliberately. A few seconds later, he continued. You're quite cute, Bnoel. I don't think your compliments are very sincere. Chen Jinhao moved to the side, pulling some distance between the two of them and was on extreme alert. As the saying goes, a weasel never visits a chicken with good intentions. When a man says something nice to a woman in bed, then you'll have to take note of the meaning behind them. Chapter 39. The doorbell rang. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Moreover, Chen Jinhao really felt quite suspicious at the word cute that he used. Because she had a keen sixth sense. The man raised a brow. After some thought, he said, I think that your behavior earlier is actually quite silly. You're looking to die. However, Chen Jinhao had no idea how things progressed to this point. Anyway, she was just like Danny right now, getting her back stroked in a daze while her mind gradually emptied. She began to get lost in her thoughts. A man and a woman chatting together on a bed under the covers was definitely questionable. Also, you definitely have to be wary of a man in bed. Due to what she was doing earlier, Yan Cheng took the initiative to offer to help her apply lotion on her back. He knew that it was difficult for her to rub her own back, and this man sounded sincere and honest. He had such eloquence that she had no idea how she was going to contest him. I won't take advantage of you. Yan Cheng cleared his throat and looked elsewhere. If I really wanted to take advantage of you, why wait till today? Chen Jinhao eyed him with suspicion and caution. But no matter how guarded she was, she couldn't guard against his clever tongue. It's a pity that someone like Yan Cheng wasn't performing cross-talk. In the end, he managed to make her crawl out foolishly from under the covers, slowly take off her bathrobe, and revealed her back, laying down nicely for him to mess around with. Chen Jinhao blushed silently under the dim orange light. Calloused fingers brushed past her spine, and the delicate skin felt a little numb from the slightly rough touch. He was moving so slowly. Yan Cheng was definitely doing it on purpose. Chen Jinhao frowned and said, you can just give it a simple rub or two. But as soon as she said that, the man suddenly leaned over her. Nibbling on her earlobe, he let out a chuckle, hot breath brushing against her ear, causing Chen Jinhao to shudder as she subconsciously wiggled away. In the next second, she had become as red as a boiled shrimp. Yan Cheng. Where are you putting your hands? Chen Jinhao was furious. Things seemed to be going in an unexpected direction, but it also felt as if it was progressing this way to begin with. Tiny kisses fell down on the back of her neck. Yan Cheng's voice was hoarse. I looted it up. There's actually a way to treat period pains. After a pause, he asked, do you want to try it? Without even thinking about it, Chen Jinhao responded. No thanks. Tisk, she tried to push his arm away. You, not so rough. Yan Cheng raised a brow and pretended not to have heard it. Panting slightly, he brushed her long hair away and reached down to kiss her red cheeks. Her face was pink like peach blossoms and her eyes were wet with moisture. The sight of her made his heart beat. He tensed his jaw and pursed his lips, whispering, honey, let's do it. The last two words were stuck in his throat due to the sudden ring of the doorbell. He had to admit, 1,000 curses were brewing up inside of Yan Cheng right now. Not only did that person trample over his ever-quickening heartbeat, but they belted out a tone as if to mock his bad luck. The man who was dominated by his desire was looking quite terrible. He buried his face in Chen Jinyao's neck in frustration and after a few seconds, decided to have misheard. Yan Cheng hoped that the person in front of his door could understand and leave. He kissed Chen Jinyao's ear. He didn't let her go and planned to continue. Then, the doorbell rang again. Chen Jinyao gasped and tried to push him but he wouldn't budge. The doorbell, you must have heard wrong. With a straight face, Yan Cheng said righteously, I didn't hear anything. Chen Jinyao shot him a questioning look. Did you ask one of your buddies to come watch the game with you? But then again, the soundproofing in our house is a bit poor, that was true. Yen Chen agreed. Indeed. After a moment of silence, Chen Jinyao sighed. Cut it out and go open the door. I'm not going. I'm not decent to see someone right now. Yen Chen eyed her and locked their fingers together, murmuring, and neither are you. Only they've probably dawdled for too long. The doorbell stopped ringing. Things went silent outside. Yen Cheng's brows quirked. But he didn't have the time to feel happy about it yet. In the next second, Chen Jinyao's phone rang. Yen Cheng gritted his teeth and pressed Chen Jinyao's hands, not allowing her to move. After being in a stalemate for a few seconds. Heh. Sensing the changes in the man's mood, she was able to guess the reason. Chen Jinyao pursed her lips to hide her amusement and patted him reassuringly. We've got plenty of time. Chapter 40. Sorry for bothering you, when you are listening at novelfull.audio. The call came from Chen Jinlin. She didn't have God's eyes. Naturally, she had no idea that her sudden parachute landing would plunge the situation past a few walls in the bedroom into smoke. Chen Jinyao asked her to wait patiently. The ignorant knows no fear after all. Chen Jinlin was speaking cheerfully on the phone, and at the end, she finally added the finishing touch. Sis, I came to celebrate the New Year's with you. Are you happy? The phone was put on speaker and Chen Jinyao could clearly see the dark resentment forming on Yen Cheng's face. He looked angry enough to throw her to the ground. He pulled the bathrobe up from her waist and helped her put it on slowly while sighing constantly throughout the process. Fine beads of sweat lined his forehead. Finally, after tying up her bathrobe in a tight knot with the last of his willpower, the force of his hands were almost enough to break her waist. You could tell just how upset Yen Cheng was right now after being interrupted. Chen Jinyao didn't even dare to look into his flaming eyes. She looked away, feeling guilty as she pressed her lips together. After lowering her voice and giving her a dry yeah, Chen Jinyao couldn't help but think, I'm afraid you're going to be hacked to death by your brother. In law. She hung up. Chen Jinyao reassured Yen Cheng and puffed her cheeks, lifting her head and put a cheerful peck on his chin. But that didn't help. Yen Cheng was scratching at his head in annoyance. Then, he took advantage of the moment when Yen Cheng loosened his grip on her to jump out of bed and rushed into the bathroom. Looking in the mirror, she realized that she looked like she had just been ravaged. Her cheeks were red and her eyes were wet. With a slight curve of her pretty eyes, she could seduce the eager Yen Cheng into ravaging her a second time. In fact, that was what Yen Cheng thought as he sauntered in slowly. Chen Jinyao splashed some cold water on her face to try and cool herself down, but it wasn't super effective. When she looked in the mirror again and saw Yen Cheng leaning at the side, she raised a brow and took a jab at him. Cold shower. She even wanted to add, cold showers are good for your physical and mental health. But she didn't have the time to when she heard a meaningful snicker from Yen Cheng. Then, he quickly stepped over and pressed her down on the counter. Narrowing his eyes, he leaned down and sucked hard on her neck. He gasped in an extremely seductive manner. A cold shower won't help. Yen Cheng's heart jumped and her legs almost went soft. Yen Cheng, TSK, get out quickly, I got myself to deal with. She couldn't help but imagine the scene, and her imagination must have been too strong as Chen Jinyao's face began to burn up again after her previous failure of cooling down. The raging flames was enough to burn her to death. She couldn't catch her breath and she tried her best to push him away with red cheeks, glaring at him. You scoundrel. Young Master Yen shrugged, unable to deny it. In the next instant, he hissed in pain. He had just been stepped on the foot, but Chen Jinyao had already hurried away from the scene of crime, before the pain could even register, leaving Yen Cheng the scene of a figure hurrying away. Mother and Father Chen actually chose to go on a trip during the Spring Festival in order to avoid the tedious process of visiting their relatives. And the situation now was, for fear of Chen Jinlin being a third that wheel in their couple space, affecting their twilight love symphony, the old couple decided after a few seconds of thought that young people should go off to their own young people world and used that as an excuse to abandon Chen Jinlin, crossing her name out from the travel list. Then, after enjoying a quiet day of solitude at home, Chen Jinlin was unwilling to remain isolated during this festive season, especially after the creeps and chills she felt inside the Noa villa when night came. Without any hesitation, she packed her luggage and called a cab, running through half the capital to Chen Jinyao's place. Or to put it nicely, accompanying you through the New Year's out of sisterly love. But the long wait made Chen Jinlin frown. She was confused and didn't understand why her sister Chen Jinyao wouldn't even come to open the door for her. She called her so she knew that her sister was at home. Chen Jianlin even began to suspect that she was waiting at the wrong door. After a moment of silence, she pushed her suitcase back and squinted her eyes at the number plate. But it's the right door. She rubbed her face and sat down on her luggage, taking out her phone and began chatting with her boyfriend to pass the time. Only Chen Jinlin. My sister is outrageous. She still hasn't opened the door for me yet. Luo Xiao. I remember you saying that your sister is married. Chen Jinlin. Right. Then, her boyfriend vaguely taught her a lesson. Luo Xiao. Think about it this way. Not many people are willing to accept you other than me at such an hour. Think about why. Chen Jinlin thought he was trying to pick a fight with her. Draw your sword. This went on for about 5 minutes.